Hi, everybody. John Faring here with Live Large Universe, and I'm here tonight with Aedan Croft from Wisconsin. How you doing tonight, Aedan?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty darn well, and I bet your second chance at life, you're feeling pretty good about things these days too, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I have a very happy perspective towards everything.
Yeah, man. It's like it's one of those things. It's a huge wake up call when you have an incident like you have that we'll be talking about tonight. But in the last few weeks, how's things been going? We were just chatting here before the show a little bit, and you told me you were had a recent stumble ride up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is anybody who rides Wisconsin or Minnesota, Upper Michigan's one of those close places you can get mountain-like snow while staying close to the Midwest. So. Tell me about your last trip you had last weekend. Who all went with you, and did you guys have a good time?
Yeah, so I think mountain like snow is a thing of the past there in the UP, unless you time it right. I mean,
Fair enough.
you gotta hit it like that. But yeah, we had a good time. It was me, one of the guys from the Colorado. Actually, no, yeah, it was just one of the guys from the Colorado crew, and then we got a buddy that's about an hour south of me. We did a little quick trip up to the UP, and I had one condition. It was that I don't spend any money going because they really wanted me to go because I've, other than my recent incident, I've got pretty good leadership skills in our crew. I could find us some really good spots, and it was pretty unfortunate. We're trying to ride the Kingston Plains area, which is in
Gotcha.
Munising, and it was quite a disappointment. We were following a storm that recently hit,
Yeah.
and we got there, it was just ice on the ground.
Yeah,
Um,
that's never fun. Sleds overheat and
yeah,
all that. So yeah, we actually finally got a little bit of decent snow here in Washington the last 2 weekends in a row. So 2 weekends ago, I was out of state in Minnesota visiting my folks in Minnesota, actually not too far from you, about 3 4 hours away. And then it snowed and had a great riding time when I was gone, which never fails. That's the way it always works when I leave the state. The snow hits back home always the best. And then this weekend we had another storm that come through right before the weekend, and we ended up having a couple feet of good snow in the mountains, and had our club go out and did a great club ride. We had, I think, geez, at one point we had, I think, 17 people in our group that we had with us, and just finding the POW and trying to do it safely at the same time, as we'll talk about tonight quite a bit. So. But anyway,
yeah.
we've got people coming in and watching right now. So we've got at least 14 people here already live. And anybody who's here watching would ask you a huge favor. I need you to go into the comments and just let us know where you're watching from. So just go in there and say if you're coming in like Mark is from Washington State, or we have Dave from Snowmobile, Wisconsin is here as well. So I don't know if Aiden, you follow the Snowmobile Wisconsin page, Facebook page, but Dave's been a past guest on our show too, and he's a big supporter of snowmobiling, especially in the Wisconsin area. So thank you, Dave, for
Oh, cool.
watching.
Yeah, I
Any
just started following him on Facebook.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah. So anybody else who's watching, please go in the comments and let us know we're watching out. We'll give you a shout out in the comments. And if you also share the show out, so that would be huge. If you guys would just right away here share the show out and let everybody know what we're doing here tonight. And as you share it out, just say, "Hey, everybody, we got an amazing story here about an avalanche survival story," and we're gonna do that out. And if you guys do that, we're going to have you entered in to win this amazing prize. So Mountain Lab, great products, man. I've got Mountain Lab stuff in my tunnel bag. I've got it in my backpack. I use stuff literally today. I was in the garage working under my Jeep and had a Mountain Lab headlamp on my head, to be able to see under the Jeep, and it's like a little spot lamp. But Mountain Lab makes so many cool items, and one of the cool items they've got now is this kokanee dry bag. This is a prize that we'll be giving out to somebody, and if all you have to do to be entered in to win is just share the show out and let us know, that you're supporting the show. All right, Aiden, let's dive in a little bit. So, buddy, let's talk a little bit about I saw on your Facebook page, I saw it getting shared out. I think a YouTube video that you had too on your page, and I actually, because people know the type of podcast that I do, I was tagged in a few of your posts to kind of check out the incident and the avalanche that you had. And we're going to get into that tonight. Pretty powerful story. But before we do that, we need to get to know you a little bit. So do us a favor. Just let us know a little bit about yourself, where you're from, maybe how old you are, what you do for work, how long you've been snowmobiling. So give us a quick rundown on how things are in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Illinois on the countryside, a little small town called Hampshire. It was a little farm town, and it's crazy because it's grown up to be this giant suburb town. I mean, cookie cutter houses everywhere.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a disappointment kind of moving out of there. I hope my mom never hears me say that because I was a moody little crybaby when that happened at 14 years old. You know, I it's important I mention that because that's actually where I started snowmobiling. We had this super old 3-up Arctic Cat sled that was it was a 660 turbo,
Gotcha.
and it was a 3-up. My brother and I, we ripped that thing through the ditches everywhere, and back in that time there was a lot of snow, so we'd put that thing in some pretty nasty spots, and we just so my snowmobile journey started there. That's where I got my first actual sled, which was a 2012 Arctic Cat XF 800, and yeah, we rode there for a while, and then I think when I turned 12, which is the age in Wisconsin where you can get your snowmobile certificate, I started going up to the UP with my dad, and that's when we started doing our actual snowmobile trips. That's kind of where it kicked off. I moved to the city, in we're a town north of Chicago. That was the worst time of my life, and I actually hated it there.
Yeah.
So my first goal in life was to get out of there. I moved to Colorado, coming out of, I went to college. I tried college. Um, I dropped out of college and chased my dream of being a lineman. First step was getting my CDL, and the second I got my CDL, I went to Colorado for a year. I lived in Steamboat Springs, which is right where Rabbit Ears is at, and it's about an hour south of where the whole incident happened, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking myself, I know the area pretty well, which I do. And then coming back from Colorado, just because because of my job, they moved me down to Denver, and that was the reason why I moved to Colorado, was to get out of the city. So I came to Wisconsin. I'm on my own now. It's pretty sweet. I got my apprenticeship as a lineman, and it really didn't work out for me as I wanted it to. I wasn't happy. So I'm chasing a trucking business right now, doing hot shotting, and I'm an operator on the side for a local company here. It's a cash gig, but
Yep. Yep. All good.
yep, yeah. So I mean, I've been riding ever since I was, geez, probably 6 years old. I
Yeah.
was on the back seat, but yeah,
It's always fun when tell people that are in your life about snowmobiling and how much, how awesome it is. And like, I mean, honestly, like I do all kinds of other things too. I do off-roading, I do, snowmobiling, I do, motorcycling as well. And, we do hiking. Even I've done boating in my lifetime. I've been out on ATVs and side-by-sides. It's, there's quite nothing quite like snowmobiling, right? Like that feeling of gliding
100%.
across the snow, the power, the horsepower, the speed, the deep snow when you get out there, that feeling like you're just floating around on clouds, man. It's like nothing else, and it's very addicting, which is why we all are here, chatting and talking to each other tonight. So,
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to my dad real quick. I mean, he's really the one that got me into it. I mean, one of my most memorable snowmobiling experiences was, I think I was about 12 years old, and me and my dad were doing a birthday trip for me. It was
yeah,
me and him up in Wisconsin, and we wanted to go snowmobiling, but it just wasn't very good condition. So we packed up and went to the UP, and I rode on the back of that 2012 Arctic Cat that I bought off him eventually.
yeah,
And it was just me and him. We rode the trails. We did a little boondocking within our limits of riding solo, which would be not going farther than 10 feet from the trail.
yeah.
And he kind of showed me what boondocking was. He's like, "This is what we do when you're not, when we can't bring you." It was just an awesome time.
There you go. Introduced you to the sport and got you loving it. So, well, let's
Yep.
do a couple of call outs here for folks who are watching. So we've got Mark Wade, of course, from Washington, Dave from Wisconsin. Pete Van Dusen is here from Washington as well. He's here from Duvall, Washington. We've got Jim Johnston is from Tri-Cities, Washington. We've got Casey Matson from North Dakota. Thank you for watching. Rocky Mountain Sled Conditions, our buddy out there who does the website for Rocky Mountain Sled Conditions. He's been on the show in the past before. So, Brett, thanks you for watching and thanks for supporting the show again. And Bob Tomzak from Port Angeles, Washington. We've got Rick Schursel here from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Rick has been a guest many times. I think he still holds the record for the most times on the show with a single guest, and Rick is the guy that does altitude sickness. So anybody who needs a great first aid kit, which Aedan, based on the way you live your lifestyle, you might make sure you have a couple of extra good first aid kits with you. So go look up Rick.
Well, what do you mean when you say altitude sickness? Is that
It's actually
when
just
you?
the brand name. The brand name of altitude sickness is the
Oh,
brand name, and then it's a first aid kit. So,
cool.
but yeah, he's a first responder, firefighter, first responder, and he's come up with an amazing
Oh,
first
sweet.
aid kit that I carry with me in my Jeeps and in my snowmobiles. So, We got Philip is here from, I don't know. Philip, let us know where you're watching from. We got Andy here from Colorado. Oh, Philip is from Washington, he says. So perfect. All right. So we got Todd Swing here watching from Minnesota. So we got quite a crew. So everybody, one more time, if you guys give us a quick share, let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and then share the show out, and we'll enter you in to win this Kokanee dry bag. So again, come on in and share it out, and we'll get you there. So very good. All right. Gonna change the old lighting there again, Aiden. We got your computer up.
Oh, did it? I was gonna do a share real quick. I forgot to
Oh,
earlier.
that's okay. You can do it after the
I
show
can
too.
multitask.
You can
Okay.
multitask. Perfect, perfect. So, all right, Aiden. So let's talk a little bit about how often did you go out to Colorado to ride like that? Is that an annual trip that you went out with? And let us know a little bit about like the crew that you ride with. Is that family? Is it friends? Just kind of tee it up for us a little bit about how often you've been going to Colorado. You know, is it a regular thing? Do you go to the same area? Do you go to different areas? Just warm us up to the idea of going out on this Colorado trip that you were on.
Yeah. So we, like I said earlier, we go to the UP a lot, and excuse me. So like the UP's always been a great place for us to ride. Like you said, the mountain snow and just incredible conditions a lot of the time. Um, Over the years, it's gotten kind of harder to hit that sweet spot when you do get the good snow. And it's just, the conditions have been degrading there for a while now. So about 5 years ago now, we started riding in Colorado. It was actually my mom's idea. We booked this extravagant place called Midnight Ranch. We've been staying there past 5 years now. And that puts you right in the backcountry, even beyond rabbit ears. It's not as good riding, but it's pretty sweet. Um, so ever since then, instead of really doing family trips, we've taken our normal Michigan snowmobile crew. It was a big decision, like should we bring them out there or not?
Yeah,
The snow, less experienced riders and stuff. So, we started bringing everyone out there. It's my dad, my two brothers, a few of my buddies, sometimes here and there, and then a bunch of his customers for his company.
gotcha.
And so yeah, we've been riding out there now for 5 years. It's always been an awesome time, and that's really our highlighted trip of the year.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
So this particular trip, it was late February, right? Like here about roughly a month ago is when this trip was at, right?
Yep. So normally we go out in March, and it's rookie hero snows, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm always complaining like, man, I just want that powder. I mean, isn't that why we're coming out here? So we started planning more in February now, and that's kind of what we got now. We've been going in February.
Yeah, February is typically like the most consistent month of good snow, and as you've learned, and as a lot of people know, is that February, late February, all the way into the first part of March, and even into late March is kind of prime time for avalanche season. It just seems like that's when the snowpack is primed up and set up because you've got some warming cycles, you get some more weak layers in there, which is what you ran into this year too. And so we'll talk more about that as we go into it, but. Take us to the trip itself. So you guys were out there. As I talked to you earlier today, you'd confirmed for me that the avalanche didn't necessarily happen on the first day. So tell me a little bit about the first couple of days of your trip, and how the ride was going. What maybe in hindsight were some red flags or things that you maybe looking back at would have maybe thought about doing differently in hindsight. But tell me about those first few days before the day of the avalanche. So
Yeah, you mentioned the no, like dangers I could have noticed, and I'm going to tell you right before I forget is as we're driving there, I think so I go on my own when we go out west. I pull our trailer, and then since my dad's down in Illinois, and he picks up his buddies, and they go in their truck. And so I got there a day early to ride with my local buddies in Steamboat that I got buddies there. And just right before I went riding, he gave me a call. He's like, "Hey man, just be careful. I guess the avalanche conditions are, or the avalanche forecasts are a little more intense this year." So I mean that's probably the first red flag. And so, but yeah, the first few days of riding, I mean I try to do like a staggered difficulty with the guys. So the first day where we ride, I mean we probably don't go more than 5 miles out of this area. So I mean there's a mix of everything there. So the first day we get there, and I think it's the most snow the guys have ever seen, because we honestly didn't even make it off the trail the first day.
wow,
We're hitting all these spots on the side, and normally we don't even ride those spots because the snow is never that good. I mean, usually you see bare dirt on these mountains, and we're climbing all these spots like crazy. Awesome time. Second day we made it out to the valley, which is the base of Hans Peak, and that was pretty sweet. We're kind of going around the perimeter and stuff. I find some of these sweet spots. We don't necessarily climb it. We're on the kind of the base of it where there's these sweet little zones that you can hit,
Yeah.
and we're all sticking together. And then the third day is when I think third or fourth day is when things that one is when that happened,
Got a little ugly
and that
that day.
was
Yeah.
yeah. It's funny because everyone's like, okay, we need to take it easy on this last day. We're all tired. And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. This is the day where I kill you guys and try to get you guys to learn new things.
There you go. So is the riding
Yeah.
group, was there a lot of people that it was maybe their first time ever out in the mountains, off trail riding, backcountry riding in the mountains, or had everybody had at least some experience backcountry riding?
Second or third time out west.
Okay.
They've all been riding with us in the UP now for, geez, probably 10 years. As a From my experience personally, I don't think I there's some learning to be done on their end, even in the UP. But I personally think that most of your experience is gained out in the mountains, so their experience is pretty limited for them to grow. So it's newer stuff for them for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, snowmobiling, Midwest style versus like getting out in the backcountry and riding, it's like it's so different. And if anybody's watching this that maybe isn't a snowmobiler and just here to kind of hear Aiden's story, I would tell you that you could be an experienced rider in the Midwest, and trail riding, even a little bit of off trail riding, lake riding, and the snowmobile, when you get out into deep snow on a mountain sled, the machine is a completely different animal. So you steer the opposite way in order to go the way you want, versus the way you do in the Midwest is you turn right to go right, you turn left to go left. Out in the mountains, you turn left to go right, you turn right to go left. You shift your body weight, you throttle up, you use your brakes, right? So it's like this whole
Yeah.
ballet dance that you do out in the mountains. And because it's such a challenging thing to do, once you master it, it becomes this like most amazing sport ever, which is why we all get addicted to it and why we're out having such a good time doing it. So take us to the morning of the day of the avalanche, right? Let's start out at like getting up in the morning, having breakfast. Just talk me through the day and how it went, and kind of how the discussions went as you guys started to hit the snow.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I'm actually kind of funny to tell you this little ironic portion of it. So in the morning, I'm the go-getter guy. I'm the
Yep.
fastest driver. I'm not afraid of the snowy roads, and everyone knows that about me too. They're like, "Oh yeah, you lived out here for a year. You can handle all this stuff, and you know how to drive. You know how to drive in the mountains." So, um, one of the guys, he accidentally pulled his Avi pack, and he had the canister style. So I went down to Steamboat Power Sports to get him a air canister for his Avi pack. That's kind of where the day started. I
Yeah.
got a part for my sled. It was a little bushing that goes in your primary clutch. Um, so then after that, we kind of head back towards the Midnight Ranch where we're staying at, and we go to this little place called the Clark Store. I mean, best breakfast burritos in the world.
Very good.
we get a nice feast before we go riding because we usually don't eat out in the mountain. And yeah, we got back to the place. Everyone got ready, and we kind of just set off like any other normal day. And as we're getting to the riding area down the trail, I'm skipping all these little side spots that we have been getting stuck on, just because I want to get to Hans Peak today. I want to climb it. I want to see, how far I can get these guys into the situations and stuff. And yeah, so it was pretty much I just love that ironic part that I went to go get that guy's Abbey Pack canister.
It's another little
Yeah,
sign that you didn't realize was a sign, right? So
right.
very good, very good. So let's just do a couple more calls for people who are watching here too. We've got Artie is here. He's part of the local Stumble Club. Not sure he's in Montana. Moved to Montana now. It says. I got Sodi Clay here from Northern California. Got Uchi Uchinero, which is a gentleman out of Colorado. So I know he's paying close attention to the riding areas you're talking about. I'm sure he knows them. And then we have Eric Nelson here, who's originally from Wisconsin, now lives here in Washington State. And we have Travis, my friend from Alberta, Canada, is here as well too, watching. So another snowmobiler from the Great White North. So, all right. So you're there. You guys are pushing into the backcountry, and tell us about the route you were taking. And I think one thing I understand about your avalanche is that you were in a position where you had ridden off away from the group by yourself. So talk to me about the timing of everybody being together, and then that decision to kind of peel off and go into more advanced terrain that put you in a position where you were by yourself. So lead us up
Yeah.
to the moments right before the avalanche. So
Yeah. So like I said, I was kind of skipping all the side spots and stuff, and um, I'm kind of basing my ride off memory here. We're kind of going down. There's probably one main trail in the area, and so I find this one big open spot. I'm like, hey guys, let's hit this real quick. Let's break in for the day here. And it's just a little drop off, and then you come back up. Nice little open area. So we hit that for a little bit, and then I think everyone was like, all right, let's go to the next spot. And that's like my entrance to get to the top of Hans Peak. It's just this series of zones that are like super steep, and I thought it was a lot easier because the year before the snow conditions were definitely a bit different. So we're going down the trail a little bit more, and we get into this area, and it's just beautiful. I mean, these guys are like, "Holy crap, you found this?" I'm like, yeah, we were here last year. You just might not remember. So yeah, we're ripping all this up, crazy steep slopes right in front of you, with a nice little open area for the guys, and then there's no trees, so the less experienced guys can do their hill climbs and not have to worry about crashing into a tree.
yep.
So there's this one really steep hill climb I'm looking at, and that was like my first time I broke off. I'm looking at it, I'm like, holy shit. And I climb right up, and I'm looking down, like I can see all the guys down there. I'm like, come up here, come up here. And I've got a good feeling none of them are making it up here. So that was one of my first times I broke off that day. And I actually hit it. I went through these tight little trees, this tight little spot with the trees. And then it was just the coolest thing ever, just these giant wide open spots that I kept one after another. And then I got to the spot. I thought it was super funny that I was there 5 years ago. Took a completely different path, and I just thought it was funny how I remembered that. And I'm like, okay, I'm thinking this. I'm a little far from the guys. I should probably turn back. It's that same thought I had later on. I come back, and then they're kind of saying, all right, we've torn up this spot. Let's go on to the next one. I'm like, okay, we're gonna go down, follow this tree line, and we're gonna shoot. I'm gonna try to get you guys straight up so there's no issues with people getting stuck and stuff. We didn't even make it to the top of that spot. It was my dad and I, and then two other guys. And they're like, I'm telling them, all right, you guys can just wait here for the rest of the guys. I'm gonna go find, the best route for everyone to take, assuming everyone makes it up this first spot. So I break off. I communicate that I'm breaking off. Still not the greatest idea. And I'm trying to find my way. There's these drop offs I hit that were super easy to get through for me. Those later on posed a challenge for the guys when they tried to find me. Didn't really consider that. And then, so I keep going. And right there, I probably should have stopped. I probably should have waited there to see if the guys can catch up there. But I'm looking straight ahead in front of me is this spot that looked familiar for the past 2 years, where I'm climbing. So I keep going. I keep exploring a little bit. And then that's when I finally hit that spot. If you watch my video, I'm like, no way. Because it's just exciting that I always find my way back to that same spot. And I'm looking right at it, and it's just this giant open area. And then there's a giant hill climb right in front of it. I got all excited. I'm like, I can't wait to get all the guys up here, so we can hit this. So I go to approach it, in the video I'm getting closer and closer. And I'm thinking, I really want to climb this. Like, I really just want to hit it right now. And I'm not going to do that. I know better. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, like, I'm not going to climb it. I'm going to wait for everyone to get here. But, I can at least, in the event that we don't make it this far, let me just side hill real quick on it. Let me just go up and around this shrub. So I'm looking at the shrub, like, I'm not, like I said, I don't know how much time I have to express how important I think that thought is like, I'm not going to climb this by myself.
Yeah, there was a moment in your head that you're looking at this slope that you didn't even know was about to take your life, that you're like, you're already second guessing it, right? So there's some intuition inside you that's telling you like, nope, I shouldn't do this. And then you hit the bottom of it, right? And that's what ultimately triggered the avalanche. And I think for anybody who hasn't, like after the show is done, what we'll do is we'll share the link to the YouTube video that you made in the comments of the show, so people can click on it and watch it to see the actual recording, because you had your GoPro on through this whole thing. And yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy because things we'll talk about here, and maybe this is a moment before we get into the actual avalanche that we talk a little bit about. You hadn't mentioned it yet as part of your routine, but I'll just ask you kind of point blank here is like, did you check out the avalanche forecast that morning or that week as you guys have been riding?
Yeah, I did check the avalanche forecast. Really not as a precautionary thing. I
Yeah,
just checked it out of pure curiosity, and
yeah,
my 5 years of riding in Colorado, I've never really considered checking it, to be honest with you.
yeah.
Um, and if you don't want me telling this part of the story, just tell me to stop. But
That's okay.
like I said, riding for the past 5 years, or I should say the past 3 years, that's when I really met up with these guys in Steamboat that I've made friends with, and we've ridden rabbit ears now. We ride all that spot a lot, and I think I asked them probably 2 3 years ago, just out of my own curiosity and safety. I was like, should we be having avalanche packs or anything like that? And the response I got was, we're not really riding, a spot where you need them. So I guess avalanche gear in that area was always never a concern to me, or
Yeah.
checking the forecast or anything.
Yep. And that was kind of my follow-up question then too, is like, were you riding with, what most people would consider required gear, which is avalanche transceiver, beacon, the transceiver is the beacon, and then you have a probe and a shovel, right? So if you need to get a
Yep.
hold of somebody and probe them and then, dig them up with a shovel. So were you riding with beacon, shovel, probe, or any of those items?
No,
Yeah. And so that's
there is a shovel, but it's on the sled.
yeah, and the sled, as you realized, got buried, right? And I think that's one of the
Yep.
reasons everybody in training goes through the idea of like having all those items on you, right? Like so having the beacon under your jacket, under your most outer layer, in your backpack then would be a shovel and a probe. And then you and I talked a little bit about this earlier today too. Is you also weren't wearing an avalanche bag, which the gear, whatever the avalanche bag where you pull it, the big balloon goes up on your shoulder. But frankly, without your beacon, shovel, and probe, avalanche bag wasn't going to do you a whole lot of good either. And especially
No.
considering the fact that you were at the base of the hill and all the snow came down on top of you. The way an avalanche bag works is that you'd have to be up on top of the slope, and as you're sliding down, have enough cognizance to pull it, and then ideally it would keep you floating on top of the snow as it's traveling down the mountain. But being at the bottom of the mountain, in this situation, an avalanche bag wouldn't have even done anything for you likely. And so I think that's a powerful reminder for everybody is that we are going to do with around the people we surround ourselves with, right? Like the people you've been riding with had never been experienced or exposed to the idea of avalanche safety or gear. Nobody's put that in their heads to the point where they thought it was important. And here you are, a young man who's now 22 years old, going through your teenage years, not riding with people who put a priority or an importance on that, right? And so
Yep.
we all have the ability to be influenced by others and to influence others. And then that's the big reason why you're here tonight is hopefully this idea of what did we learn, what are we going to do different, and how can we influence people moving forward, I think is a big part of why we share this message. And so with that in mind, you're riding to the base of this hill with no beacon, shovel, probe, or avalanche bag. Um, Another thing you shared with me earlier today too that I think is a relevant detail too is the tether on your sled wasn't something that was attached to you either, and I think that's another good
Yeah.
moment to talk about and lesson learned either. As we get into the story, you'll hear why in just a minute, but just take us into the idea of like you're hitting the bottom of the slope, you start to get stuck. Talk us through it. What happens next? What are the details?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, like I had no intentions of really going straight up it or anything by
Yeah,
myself. So I'm just thinking, let me brush it real quick just to see how deep the snow is at the bottom, just to say I hit it.
yep,
And as I'm kind of going up just a little bit around this bush, I can feel the sled kind of starting to get stuck, and I just kind of figure in my mind, I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to react fast enough to get it back down. So I'm just gonna kind of, and it's kind of starting to go up. So I'm just gonna let it kind of, I'm gonna pin the throttle, jump off. So I pin the throttle, jump off. I end up in the little trench I had just dug, and I'm looking to my right, and that's kind of when it started to happen. So, and did you ask about the tether yet, or?
well, I just mentioned that you didn't have a tether on, and so when you
Yeah,
popped
yeah,
the throttle and the sled jumped forward, the sled was still running, right?
yeah,
um, in some situations in an avalanche where you could be very close to the sled or whatever, if the sled is still running, now the carbon dioxide from your engine coming into the area is an additional hazard on top of just the fact that you were just buried, right? And in this case, it didn't necessarily play into the situation, but it's just a good reminder for everybody too. And we're talking about safety protocols and why it's so important to wear your tether, have all the avalanche gear, all those kind of things. and then ride with a group that's with you too, right? Like spinning off on your own was a big part of this situation too that put you in extreme danger. So you just got hit with an avalanche. Talk us through second by second here what's going on. Like you're being buried, you are buried. Like what's going through your mind? What's this whole thing, by the way, for everybody watching, this whole process lasts 90 minutes, an hour and a half long. He was buried in the snow before he was completely released and back out. So just an incredible miracle that he survived it. And details here to come on what happened and why and what caused you to be so lucky to be able to survive it. So
Yeah, bear with me. It's been a minute now for me.
it's okay.
Yeah, it's like it started with me kind of look like I said. I always say in the video. I look to my right and then I see all this snow rushing towards me. What kind of triggered that was I could feel a little shift in the snow, and I looked so fast to my right, like I knew something was happening, and there was honestly no time to react to do really anything. I mean, if I had a bag, I might have been able to pull it. I don't really know for sure. Um, that's right when the snow swept me up though, and my first thought was like, "Holy shit, I'm gonna die," you know. And so I'm thinking like, okay, I'm not, if I do make it out of here, like, I think the snow just put the fear of God into me, and I'm never riding again. Um, I changed my mind real fast, but yeah, so it swept me away, and for a whole 10 seconds, I'm just getting tumbled around in the snow. I'm kind of trying to wave my arms around as if I was describing it as if you're trying to swim to like the top of a pool, So I'm trying to go with the flow of the snow,
Yeah.
just to any chance to keep me surfaced. And I don't know necessarily if that helped me or not, but where I landed upright, facing the sky. In fact, I was facing the mountain that had just slid off on me.
Okay.
And the cool thing was like that. What just I don't even know how to describe it, to be honest with you. Seeing daylight was just insane. I can't believe I was so fortunate to see daylight, and my whole body, my head included, still buried under snow. There's about a foot of snow on top of me.
So
My
you
left
were
arm,
completely buried and completely under the snow, but you were close enough to the surface that you could see light. Is that what you're saying?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
So I it felt. I mean, I didn't really measure it, but it felt like a foot of snow about. And so my left arm is behind my back, kind of, or I guess it's kind of down to here. And my right arm, it was on my chest. So I used my right arm to kind of just push through the snow. There was a little bit of resistance. It wasn't too hard, but that was that was like the other really big relief is that I could actually push through the snow.
Wow, that's
So
impressive.
yeah, and it was I try to start digging the snow out. I try to start breathing. I can already feel my breath just coming right back into me, and I can feel like this lack of air. So now I'm trying to dig away the snow, and after about a minute, I get the snow completely off of my face, or I get like what was on top of me gone. But I was still kind of freaked out because as I'm getting the snow out of me, more snow was falling into my face, and I'm like, oh my god, am I ever going to be able to get all this snow out of here? And
Yeah.
eventually, thank God it stopped. Uh, and so like I said, about a foot of snow on my head, and where my legs were, there was probably about 4 feet. What it looked like when they undug me. Um, and it was just, within like the first minute and a half, I was so relieved, and it
So
got to a
how
point.
how quickly do you feel like you were able to push your arm through the snow? Was it like almost immediately within like the first 30 seconds? Like is it that quick that you were able to push your arm through the snow?
Yeah, I mean that was my first. That was like my first priority was to at least make a spot where I can breathe. You
Yeah.
can correct me if I'm wrong. From what I've heard, I've never had avalanche training, but from what I've heard on YouTube, whatever, is that snow around you kind of starts to build this ice up,
It
and
does. Yep.
so I'm thinking, okay, I got to get air right now, and if I get stuck here, unable to unbury myself, it's not a problem. If I can breathe, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was kind of my first reaction was to just get air, and then you know, I try to get myself unstuck. It doesn't really work. I dig down probably within the first 30 minutes. I'm able to get to my chest right here, which is I have my backpack and then my radio's back there, and then the actual like button part is right here. That was when I was able to get on the radio within like 30 minutes and call for help.
So you were under the snow for about 30 minutes before you were even able to get to your radio to kind of call to the rest of your crew. And did they respond right away? Did they hear you?
Yeah, so right when I grabbed my radio, I don't remember what they were saying. I don't know if they were looking for me or if they that I was the first thing that happened. There was something on the radio, and so yeah, I that was like my second priority pretty much was just to get to the radio and say, hey, I'm legit stuck in an avalanche. I'm like,
Yeah.
they're gonna be so shocked when I tell them this. I don't know if they're gonna believe me. And that's what my dad said when I first said it. He's like, are you joking? And I'm like, no, dude, this is like serious. I'm actually married. So,
Yeah, the idea that you're able to communicate on the radio. So describe to me, like, is your head able to move at this point? I mean, your arm is moving, but you're still
yeah,
mostly buried in snow. I mean, were you able to like move your head around, that kind of thing at that point? Did you get yourself dug out that far?
yeah, that was something I skipped over. Within that time frame, I did get my helmet off because I didn't want that on my head. I was already freaked out enough with things crushing me. So
Yeah, yeah,
I ripped the helmet off, and what I tried to do with the helmet is I tried to place it kind of right behind me where the snowbank was, like a flag almost. So like hoping that someone sees this little
yeah,
bright color sticking out of the snow because I know I'm in a hole that no
yeah.
one's gonna see me. So I was
S-
able to move my head, and within I think 45 minutes, that was when I really started to get into like this fight or flight mode, and I just get this buildup of strength in me, and I pull myself all the way up so I could take my bag off, just give me that mobility. So yeah,
So you were able to like kind of sit up at that point too. So your legs were still buried, it sounds like, but like you were able to get your
yep.
upper torso and almost sit up in there. So how far approximately do you think from the point that you were hit by the avalanche to where you landed? Like how far did you travel? Was it 20 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet? Any idea?
Probably between like 75 and 100 feet.
Wow, you actually moved that far.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
looking at the video and how big that hill was and how low you were on the hill, I'm actually surprised that you traveled that far. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, that's way farther than I would have expected. So the fact that you moved there, the fact that you were face up, um, so let me just look here. I've got some notes here. How would you get your face clear? Ultimate phone. Tell us about the, yeah. Let's tell us a bit about like this point where you had already described that you were with the riding group that you had pushed up into a new zone. Was the rest of your crew, once they heard you on the radio and identified that you were, in trouble, um, were they not able to reach you then just because of the challenging terrain that there was there, and they weren't able to push up that last hill to get up to you?
Yeah, so I was telling you earlier, right when I broke off from them, I went into like these two little kind of like holes in a way. I don't know how to I don't know like the right word, but I thought immediately right there, I'm like, they're probably not even gonna make it through here, and that was like my first concern. And sure
Yeah,
enough, I think two of the guys they got stuck right in that exact spot I was thinking about
yeah,
trying to find me, and
yeah.
yeah,
Okay. And so they weren't able to get up to you. And so ultimately, you sat there, you were calling back and forth on the radio. Um, I mean, at some point, 90 minutes have passed, but like at what point did there's a second riding group that was in the area apparently. How did they see you or find you? Did they see your helmet? Did they see the avalanche and then ride up on it? Like, do you have any information on like how those guys came across you in the first time?
yeah. So my crew ran into them. I
Okay.
think one of the guys was kind of parked down by the trail. These guys are thinking it's the south face of the mountain, so or I think that's what they said. They're thinking it's the south face, so like we don't ride the south face,
Yeah.
just I think they were worried about avalanches maybe. That's what they mentioned. It was
Yeah.
really the north face of the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like normally they wouldn't break off into like where we were, but one of our guys like he calls them out like, hey, one of our guys is stuck in an avalanche, and so they kind of zip up to where I'm at, and they didn't really struggle to get there. I think two of the five of them got stuck. So they get up to where I'm at, and they don't see me at all. They don't see the sled. I am waving my helmet now in the air, trying to get their attention.
Can you hear them
Uh,
coming? Like you hear their engines and stuff like that, or what?
yeah,
Okay.
yep. So they don't really hear me until the last minute, and I think one of the things I was worried about was, if they come up here in front of me explicitly, that it could trigger the other half of this mountain to slide, or maybe
Yeah.
this base is going to do something else. And sure enough, one of the guys, they don't really see me till the last minute. One of the guys pulls up in front of me, and I can feel this whole entire layer of snow that like just slid off, like shift.
Wow.
I'm like, oh shit. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, they don't see me till the last minute, and I think they saw me because I was waving my helmet in the air.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, So the other thing that just kind of dawned on me too is that, if you had been carrying an avalanche shovel beacon probe with you and it was on your backpack, it sounds like you were at a point where you were able to pull your backpack. Did you have any backpack on at all, or were you not riding with a backpack at all?
Yeah, I was riding with like a North Face backpack is
Did
what
you
I
take like
have been
that
wearing.
backpack off? I think you took your helmet off. Did you take your backpack off, or you just left that on? Or could you have taken it off if you wanted to? I guess what I'm getting at is like, could you have self-rescued had you had a shovel with you versus trying to dig in that concrete type snow with your bare hands? The gloves is almost impossible, but potentially if you could have gotten access to your shovel that was in your backpack, that if it was there, you potentially could have dug yourself out as well too, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I was actually thinking that myself. Like if I had my shovel in my backpack instead of my sled, I probably would have had a closer chance of getting myself out.
Yeah,
Because my gloves were frozen at that point, and I'm just useless. Like
yeah,
I didn't really care necessarily. I actually took my gloves off, and I'm digging through the
yeah.
snow with just my bare hands. Wasn't
Well,
fast enough,
Well, and
but
a lot
yeah,
of times when we're riding aggressively, like you've described, I mean, we're probably getting a little sweaty, kind of hot, and then you're stuck in this ice box, right? And so I would
yep.
imagine you started to get very chilled and cold sitting in the snow that long, too. Can you describe a little bit about just your physical body and your temperature and how uncomfortable you were or not?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I didn't necessarily. I wasn't when I first started. I was probably hot. When I first in there, first 30 minutes, and then I think as my adrenaline's calming down, my body, my heart rate's dropping.
Yeah,
I think that's when I started to get like this really wet, humid chill in my body. But at first, I was actually like sweating. Like you said, I was hot.
yeah,
Just I think the panic going through me, and the snow is like an insulator in a way.
yeah. Did you get to the point where you started to feel like super chilled and cold, or did you not get to that point ever?
No, not super cold or
Yeah,
anything.
okay. Um, So, any other details about the avalanche or about the particular other guys coming up on you and digging you out? I think is there any details you think there that are important and relevant before we start talking about you getting reunited with your group?
No, I mean, I can't believe like the fortunate. I don't know the right word, but the like just how lucky to be that there's another crew of guys came by that were actually capable of helping. Because I'm not going to say it's a trail rider spot. There's more trail riders in this area than there is rabbit ears.
Yeah,
Uh, and then just the area in general, everyone goes to rabbit ears, so it's not a popular riding spot, which makes it nice in a way. But there's the chance of running into other people out over here is just so rare, and you're so lucky. I'm just so lucky
yeah,
that they happen to come by.
yep,
And yeah,
absolutely. Okay. And then let's talk now about you were dug out. Obviously you're up above the snow now. Now you have the whole mission of trying to find your sled and recover it, right? Like, I mean, the sled was
yeah,
totally buried. How did you find your sled? How did you know where to look for it or find it? Like, and how did you come across it?
yeah. So when I say it was totally buried, it was more or less just an inch of snow on the very top of it. So
Okay.
I think
Was
what I
any
saw
part of
was
it
like
sticking out, like the handlebar or anything, like was sticking
I
out
was
at
just
all?
gonna say there was like a little discoloration in the snow,
Gotcha.
not from the handlebars, but because the sled's like a lighter blue, kind of like my sweater.
Yeah.
The snow color was changed a little bit, so I was able to use that to actually locate it. And
Okay.
it was maybe 5 feet from me, which is I think you mentioned earlier about the carbon monoxide. It's kind of a scary thought, how close it was to me.
Yeah. And I don't know if you have any recollection, but like how long was the sled running before it shut off and died? Because you had mentioned to me in our previous conversation that the sled ultimately at some point shut itself off.
Yeah, it was like I'd say 15 minutes exactly. I don't know if that was due to a Polaris built-in timer it has, or if it gassed itself out. I wouldn't be surprised to either
Yeah.
one of those.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know like a Skidoo, for example, if it runs, I think it's approximately 15 minutes without any change to the throttle position, it'll just shut itself off like that. I don't know if Polaris has that feature or not. Um, but yeah, no, that's interesting fact as well too. And so the guys that were coming up to get you, they dug you out. Then you and them together. Well, you didn't have a shovel; it was still on the sled. Um, so tell me about digging the sled out and how long that took.
That was a fun one. They the second they got me out, I get out of this hole. I get up on my feet, and I just give these guys like a hug.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I was so relieved, and you know they were happy to see me. They wanted to see the pictures I got and like the I guess the video of it happening, but they cared more about getting the sled. So we went straight to the sled to unbury it. Probably took 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, there was a lot of snow to remove, but yeah, it was right next to me. Like I said, we were pretty fortunate to see it there. Um, we dig it out as fast as possible. Like I said, 5 to 10 minutes. It was pretty
Yeah.
easy.
Well, and avalanche debris has the ability to kind of just squeeze into nooks and crannies that like you can't believe, and so in many
Yeah,
cases, like the tunnel, the track, everything is so jammed full of snow that to get the track to even rotate and turn can be an incredible challenge. Sometimes you get snow up into the exhaust or like inside of your air vents or under the hood. So, did you have to deal with any of that kind of stuff, or was it pretty easy to get the sled back up and running again?
there was four of us total trying to roll the sled over, and it took us all of our might to get it rolled over. I
Yeah.
mean, we tried our absolute best. We did get it to roll over to unbury it, but yeah, like it was that weight of the snow, and I think it packs down so it's more dense and heavy. It definitely, you could feel that when you're trying to roll it over and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you get the sled up, you get it fired up. Did those guys then escort you back down to your riding group again then at that point?
Uh, it was we went over the footage real quick. We talked for a second, and then I think I was so ecstatic to see everyone again. To see like my friends, my dad, my brother.
Yeah.
That was like my biggest priority. I got on that sled. I just kind of like took off, and I was telling you earlier, I kind of got to that spot where I first got, and I'm looking at the mountain. I'm like, no way. And I see all the guys there. I'm still like, oh shit, what happened? So I go back over to see what's going on, and one of the guys got stuck. So I help him get unstuck. I'm like, you guys stay on your sled. You guys just help me. It's my turn to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we get him unstuck, and then yeah, they're like, you're gonna ride back with us to your crew.
Yep. All right. So you end up coming up on your crew. Your dad's in this crew. Tell me about the moment that you got face to face with the rest of your crew, and that moment that you got to see your dad face to face again.
Yeah, I was. I mean, it was. I don't even know how to describe how happy I was in a way. Relieved.
Yeah.
I was just, and my dad too, in the same way. Like I know he was freaked out. There was one point I didn't mention this earlier when I was in this avalanche that uh, I you were asking how I got my gear off, and I did end up taking my gear off. I had a chest strap GoPro on my backpack. I ripped that all off, and then where I put my helmet was kind of like on that like a little cliff of snow. I didn't realize it dropped off, so I put my backpack, right on that cliff, and it kind of slid down. So I had actually lost my radio for about 15 minutes, and I could not talk to the guys. And that's when like I don't remember at what time frame that was, but they were like really freaked out then. Like they thought that it had like finished me off. Um, I can hear the radio still, and I'm hearing them say, "Do we call SOS?" And I was like, "Oh fuck, this is a serious situation."
Yeah.
And so I actually had my phone on me. I was able to get that out of my coat pocket, and there's no service, but you can do that satellite texting thing on the new iPhones.
Yeah.
I was able to do a satellite text to one of the guys. I just said no SOS.
Yeah.
That would have been. I didn't need that, and so I just know that whole situation freaked them out even more.
Yep.
And yeah, they were excited to see me as much as I was them.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And I think you and I chat about this a little bit too, but the feeling of the rest of your crew, and especially your dad being in that crew, feeling helpless to get up there and help you because you had gotten up in an area that they weren't able to climb up into. Um, I just thinking about that of, like I'm probably similar age to your dad and I have kids that are your age, and that's an emotional moment too. And so big shout out to the whole crew that was with you. The fear that they had, the feeling of hopelessness and desperation that they couldn't get to you, I'm sure was just terrifying for them. And there's more people than just Aedan here who are impacted by this avalanche, and I just encourage you, Aiden, to make sure that you kind of go back and talk to all of those guys and just check in with them, make sure they're doing okay too, because I'm sure there's a level of gratitude that they have that you survived, and had you not, what they would have been living with the rest of their lives knowing that they couldn't get to you quick enough. It's a crappy place to put the crew into, right? It's, I think, when you think
Oh
about
yeah.
it in hindsight. And so I think that's another one of these lessons learned that we can kind of talk about and learn from too. And there's a number of things that as we reflect back on this that I guess I'll ask you now is like, in hindsight now, knowing everything you know today, what are the things that you're going to plan on doing differently on future rides? Are you planning on getting avalanche training, avalanche gear? You're going to ride differently with your group, set expectations differently? Just talk to me a little bit about, what you've learned from the situation, what you plan on doing differently, and then ultimately, what do you hope others take away from your story?
Yeah, I think all of that, to be honest with you. I plan on getting the proper education. I do want to, I think everyone in my crew should get avalanche training. That's asking a lot for
It's
everyone
not.
to take.
It's not actually. I mean,
It's not.
but
I
here's
understand.
no, no. But here's what I'll tell you. I'm going to step in on your behalf because you're spot on. And here's the thing, Aiden, and this is just me talking as a general snowmobiler. This is not directed at you personally, but when let's say you and I are riding buddies, my avalanche training is not for me. It's for
Mhm.
you, right? Your avalanche training is for me. Your avalanche gear is that you
That's
bought
true.
is not for you. It's for me, right? And so the whole crew has a responsibility, and this is for every crew out there. This is not directed at your crew exclusively, but everybody out there who's in the backcountry snowmobiling, regardless of how crazy the terrain is or isn't, what kind of group it is, just having the dynamic of getting the avalanche training, everybody having beacon shovel, and probe, to set each of these riders up with beacon, shovel, probe, and an avalanche class, it's no different than maybe one trip to the mountains. It's less than
Yeah.
that probably, right? Like you're talking $600-700 for the class for a one, for a 3-day avalanche level 1 class. You're talking $300 for a transceiver. You're talking like $80 to $100 for a shovel. You're talking probe is maybe $60 to $80. It's not that expensive when you compare it to the fuel that you spent to get to the mountains and the lodging that you're spending, to get there, and the amount of money you put into gas and oil in your snowmobile and the cost of your snowmobile. The safety stuff that literally can save your life is a very inexpensive insurance policy to make sure that everybody in the group is prepared for the worst. And believe it
Yeah.
or not, when everybody is prepared for the worst, it's very typical that the worst doesn't happen because people are thinking in a way that causes them to make different decisions and different reactions that hopefully don't put them in that position in the first place. Because
Yeah.
trust me when I tell you, when you go through an avalanche level 1 class, you already have heard because you've talked to me and some others, but like there's no way you would ride the same way anymore. Like there's just no way you would. You just can't do it anymore because you'll realize like how lucky you were this time, which you already have. And I will say out loud too that Aiden, you were probably somewhere between 3 and 6 inches from not surviving. Like that's how
Yeah.
close this was, right? I mean, the fact that you were able to push your arm up through that snow tells me you were close enough to the surface that you could do it. But it as heavy as snow and as dense as that snow is, literally 3 to 6 inches deeper, there's no way you could have moved your arm and you would have been just there and you would have been done. And
Yeah.
so,
And as we said in the afternoon, I mean, it 3 to 6 inches, but I mean, even me just being turned the other direction could have been life or death for me. To be honest with
absolutely,
you.
yeah, if you had been flipped upside down instead of right side up, absolutely. And so, my friend God was looking out for you. He saved you to ride another day and to be here to share your story with the rest of us to help educate those who are here watching tonight. And
Yeah.
again, I just encourage everybody who's watching to, again, if you haven't already, go in the comments, let us know where you're watching from so we can kind of understand the impact of our story tonight. We also would love to have you guys share this out. And if you share this out, you'll be entered in to win a prize that we have here. But really, the ultimate prize is by sharing this out, you're potentially saving lives. You're helping other people understand the risk and the dangers of what goes on and how to mitigate it, how to be prepared to ride in the backcountry, and just do what snowmobiling is. It's the best thing you can do. It's like the most exhilarating, most fun thing ever. And Aiden, I'm sure you've already discussed this. Your plan is to still continue to ride and to get out there and get after it, I'm sure, right? But hopefully do it
Hundred
after you get
percent.
some training and get the right gear. So,
Yeah, I think with a whole different perspective.
yep, absolutely.
And like I said, I do want to do the training myself. I would love for everyone on my crew to do it too.
Yeah,
Like you were saying, it's not for me, it's for them.
yep,
And it goes both ways. I think having all of the equipment is super important, and just taking all that stuff more seriously, and not saying, "Hey, I'm not riding this crazy giant mountain you see on sled necks and Alaska." I mean, these avalanches could happen anywhere.
yep,
They could happen on the right slope in Michigan if you're being,
absolutely. Yeah,
if you
yeah.
find the
I mean,
right spot.
it doesn't take you're exactly right. It doesn't take a big crazy, hill to be killed in an avalanche. It can be literally a 20-foot tall hill and a creek drainage. That's all
Yeah.
it takes, and yeah, the risk is real. So, who do you want to recognize and say some thank yous to before we wrap this up tonight?
Oh man, I'd have to look them up on Facebook. You have to give me a minute here.
That's okay. You don't have to name them even by name, but just the crews that were out there, whether it be the guys that rescued you or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely
Your dad,
definitely
I
the
bet,
guys
your
that
mom,
rescued me.
all of those people that have made a difference in your life that have gotten you through this. So
Yeah, no, the biggest shout out goes to the three guys that were there that got me. For them to go out of their way and just to help me, it just means the world to me. Um, it means the world to me that everyone was able to, you know, talk me along with the whole thing. I'm so happy to have, a crew to ride with, and I'm happy to have that experience learned to me with other people. Because we were talking about earlier, I wouldn't ride Colorado by myself, but I've snowmobiled by myself, and it's in Michigan, and I just imagine that situation happening if I was by myself doing something stupid like that, and it's so important that I'm so appreciative that I have a good crew. They weren't able to get to me, but I have the best crew ever. You know.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I think it's the perfect time to remind everybody why the show is named what it's named. So, Live Large Universe, what we tell everybody that means is live life to the fullest. Check the box there. I think you're doing that. Make the most of every day, right? Make the most of every
Mm-hmm.
day. So, we got good days, we got bad days. What are we going to do to make the most of it? And then make a difference to others. And so, Aedan, you have just lived large as far as the way I describe it, and you've lived life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others. And God bless everybody. Have an awesome night. Thank you guys for watching and sharing the show out tonight. And Aedan, you can hang tight for a second while we wrap this up. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Yep. Bye, everybody.